That'd be great.
What are you doing? What's
Running
going on?
flat out.
It's called running flat out. I was going, wow, you're running flat out. I mean,
It's called running flat out. So I sent you that. You saw it.
Yeah,
The trailer for it. So just, taking a page out of Seinfeld's book, when he's doing comedians
right.
in cars getting coffee. And, he was being interviewed by Variety magazine saying, we could save this for the air if you want to.
We're doing it.
We are right now?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't tell me. Seriously? Got you a little butthead.
You don't need earphones.
Oh, yeah. I didn't need it. All right, let's start that. I didn't know. I thought we were just talking before you went. So I need the Book of Totems. Yeah. So, okay, what am I doing? I'm doing Running Flat Out. And it's what it is. It's a documentary. It's a half-hour documentary that we're going to make. We're just going to stream it straight through Amazon, man, so that it's available. It'll be available Thanksgiving. And what it is, it's chronicling the lives, the guys that are still alive, man, that would run liquor before NASCAR started, that also got into dirt track racing back then. And they were just the wildest ass guys. I mean, they were just the stories that these guys would do, get shot, their throats slit. One guy, Ed Samples, when he got his partner, his partner's wife said, shoot him. So he did. And Ed was like, well, you son of a, and Ed shouted to his other buddy. He's like, shoot him. He's like, Ed, you got the gun. All right. And he shot him. And the stories of Ed being taken to the hospital through those back dirt roads, up in northern Georgia, they'd have to stop at the creek and scoop up a hatful of water to put in the radiator because it's overheating at his 36 Ford back then. And, and getting there and nobody had the right blood. And then later on, when he was racing stock car and his car flipped a whole bunch of times and his brain was just hanging out, and they just basically they took him to Henry Grady Hospital in Atlanta, and they were just going to give him enough morphine until he died. And it just so happened that there was a brain surgeons convention. His brother Farrell was sitting in the waiting room and opened the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and saw, oh, there's a brain surgeons convention. That's how he lived. I mean, they were picking gravel out of his brain, and and he went on to do crazier. After that, he got his throat slit. And it was just so for these guys. And you got to realize when these guys started dirt track racing, there was nothing protective. They didn't have helmets. They didn't have seat belts. Later on down the road, when they had to start putting like some safety roll bars, they were made out of wood. Yeah. And some of them would use exhaust pipes, which dent and fold, if a car does. So it was just this wild time of life. And I said, we gotta chronicle this. We need to, because these guys are not going to be around much longer.
Have you ever been back to one of those old stills? I mean,
yeah,
one
sure.
of my favorite things
where I live? Are you kidding?
Oh yeah, they're back there, and they're old as can be. But I mean, you just sit there and you can still feel the energy coming out of it.
Yeah, I don't have to go. My neighbor got busted. What was it, Paul? Like 2 years ago, the Hiders. Yeah, because it was the Hider brothers. Because they've been making clear for it's a family tradition.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't have gotten busted except that he was selling it at a roadside produce stand, and he kept a few jars underneath. And
got some fancy pickles.
People that he knew, they was peach. They would use their peaches to flavor it, and then somebody found out about it, and he got busted. But
do you think because I do the commercials for NASCAR, different outlets like Charlotte Motor Speedway and stuff like that. One of my things when they put me in the center of that infield is not to go watch a race, but to watch people. And the one thing that I'm noticing in being out there is that I swear the people don't know the history. So when you told me that you were doing this, I'm going, well, is this not the universe bringing something together? Because I think that the passion of NASCAR is there if they're educated in the way of understanding what really brought NASCAR to life. Because they're just going out there watching these cars go around. Wreck!
I would agree with you on a certain demographic of NASCAR racers. I would say the purists, they know. They know who Bill Blair was. They know who Ed
But they're
Samples.
sitting at home in their garages, though, with that surround sound. I don't have to worry about those young kids anymore. Yeah. And so my goal as the one who's writing and producing commercials is to figure out how I can get those stands, which are empty. They're empty.
Really?
And it's like, they've got, what they do now is they put banners up there to hide the seats.
See, that's unheard of, because I tell you what, I know like in the mid to late 90s, it was every single racetrack. I mean, it was the only spectator sport in America that was still pulling 50 to 80,000 people. Right. No football team could. like NASCAR was. But you're right, the technology, now that you can have a widescreen and surround sound, why go and fight that in that traffic? Except for, the people, the hardcore fans. And I do believe that they know. I do believe that they understand and they know perfectly well that the history of NASCAR started with prohibition and running liquor and outrunning that. But what I love about the documentary we've done, and it's called Running Flat Out, by the way.
Available on Amazon?
It'll be available at Thanksgiving. You can actually you can go to Amazon.com to see the trailer. I think you'll really enjoy the trailer. Or you could go to YouTube and search official trailer Running Flat Out. What was really important to me was that there's guys that I've interviewed that are talking about people racing back then that nobody has heard of. Even the most ardent NASCAR fan that really understands the history, they've never heard of Charlie Mincy, who was 13 years old and running liquor from the time he was 13 till the time he was 19, making $1 a gallon. Can you imagine? So we're going back to 1942, Dawsonville, Georgia. This kid's driving. Right? He's got a car. He's 13. He can barely see over the steering wheel. We have photographs of Charlie standing in his car. He would go to junkyards to look for pieces of material to use for a still, to take back. I have a picture of him standing up in his jalopy. It's a ragtop jalopy. And I thought he was holding a rifle. He's holding his arm way up. And it's like, look at this little kid standing in the car. That little kid was driving at night on back roads with no headlights, getting $1 a gallon, and they were running liquor 7 days a week, and they were also running in tanker trucks carrying 10,000 gallons to go to the Midwest. Imagine getting $1 a gallon, a piece of that. And he actually was making more money then than he does now as a farmer. He's in his 80s. He's still alive. He was telling us stories of being chased on foot by G-men in the 40s through downtown Atlanta, and he ran into the Fox Theater, was hiding behind the seats. And he never got busted. He never got caught. We have a photograph of him standing outside of the courthouse. I showed this to Paul. Paul said, look at the little eaten grin on this kid's face. Yeah. He's got his little fedora on, cocked sideways, jauntily cocked on the side of his head. And he wanted the photo taken of him outside the courtyard as flipping a finger, basically metaphorically, to the courthouse because they'd never been able to get him. So he's standing on the street with his hands in his pockets. And this will look like, I'm right in front of you. And you guys don't know where I am. And that's what I loved. I tell you, Arrow, what's funny is that a friend of mine, Carrie Otis, is a comedian friend of mine. You remember Carrie in California. You met him.
I do, yeah.
And Carrie said, Carrie always brings up this side of stuff. He says, so you're basically kind of glorifying this past of these people that used to break the law and run liquor and get shot and knifed. And he said, so, and I said, well, yeah, I guess I am. And he said, so do you think in 50 years from now somebody will be producing a documentary about gangbangers, and saying, oh, those were the good old days. And yeah, we would just mow down 30 people in a neighborhood and we were dealing crack and I was like, well, God, I guess it's not too far from that. If you think about it, it's just that we always put this kind of this hazy Hallmark glaze over anything, but they were a pretty ruthless lot.
I mean, Hollywood has always been over Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah.
And all the people up there in Chicago. And it seems like you're opening a door that, it sounds like it was just as much fun.
Yeah, it was. It really was. They were pretty wild. There were women that were involved back then as well, racing. It was just Bill Blair, whose father was the great Bill Blair.
Yeah.
Bill Blair's in Georgia. And his daddy was a moonshiner, of course, and was one of the first champions. And I was talking to him, and he said, you know what, my dad told me when I asked him about what it took to do that back then, because it was ballsy, what they were doing. And he said he thought it was because these guys had just come back from the Second World War, and they were alive. So you're talking about kids that were plucked out of farms in Georgia and Mississippi and Alabama that had never been anywhere outside their neighborhood in their life. And all of a sudden they're in France and they're in Germany and they're seeing their world has rocked. And then they come back to that little farm in Georgia and they got steam to burn off. They saw the Private Ryan crap.
Oh, yeah.
And there was no Dr. Phil. There was no psychologist to go talk to about it. So they came back. They're 23 years old. They're still alive. And they got to find a way to, number one, they think they're invincible. And number two, they have to burn off steam. And that was it. It was the country was broke, right? The economy of the country was broke. If you're living on a farm, there was no way to make much money. So they started, running liquor. And a lot of them would use that money to help save the farm. And then the racing, they didn't think they were doing anything important. And,
well, why do you think that side of the South has been hidden away? Because it seems like the only thing you ever heard about the South was that it was the third world country.
Yeah.
But you are with this film, is that you're giving it a different face. I mean, it's like the South has character.
Oh, the South is rich with character, but the South has been such, with the exception of Atlanta, but a lot of these guys were coming out of Dawsonville, Georgia. It was so rural, nobody went there. There was nothing to see. It's just the farm we built. There was nothing to see and nothing to do. So they had to go into liquor, really seriously to make a living. A lot of those guys didn't even drink. A lot of them did, but a lot of them didn't. And when they started racing the cars, what was so great about that was they really didn't think they were doing anything cool. They didn't realize that they were beginning NASCAR.
Right.
They were about to do something huge. They were just doing it for something to do. And what I love about what we've been able to do, we have found never before seen footage. It is so rare to see 40s footage of dirt track racing. We've got footage in this thing of Lakewood Speedway in 1949, of Thomaston, Georgia, 1949, complete with rollovers, all 39 flathead Fords.
And where'd you find all that stuff? Or can you unveil?
Oh, I can tell you, man. Bobby Smith in Georgia said he found some he'd been searching for me and searching because it just doesn't exist. No one thought to film this stuff because they didn't think they were doing anything important.
Right.
Right? So, and who the hell had a movie camera in 1945 or 1939, back then? So Bobby said he was talking to a guy that had been given on his 16th birthday a camera, a movie camera, and he went down to Lakewood and Thomaston and he was filming. And he never became, it was just a hobby. And he stuck it in his drawer in his house for years and years and years. Wow. And that guy was moving into a retirement home and contacted Bobby and said, I'm downsizing. We're getting ready to throw everything away. I got some old film in here if you want it, but if you don't want it, I'm going to throw it away. And Bobby looked at it and went, holy cow, holy cow. And I'm looking at this stuff, and we had to get it all transferred, to DVD. And there's stuff on this stuff that we don't have in Running Flat Out because it's motorcycle. We've got dirt motorcycle racing in there and them doing tricks on the motorcycles with the guys, with women standing on their shoulders going around and riding backwards. But we see Thomaston, we see rollovers, these cars coming around, and they're so heavy. They were like, Sherman tanks that when they would roll like twice, and that was it, as opposed to when you watch NASCAR today and they're so light and they just flip. How many times is it? 30 before they just disintegrate. And then you see everybody running out because there was no rollover bars.
Do you think Jimmy Johnson or Tony Stewart could drive one of those heavy-ass cars now?
No, absolutely not. And when I look at Ed Samples and I look at Bill Blair, those guys weren't that big, but you look at photographs of them shaking hands when they're winning trophies, their forearms, their biceps, their triceps are huge. They're like tree trunks. And I sat in Ed Samples' car and Fonnie Flock and Tim Flock's car that's been restored at J.B. Day's Museum in Easley, South Carolina. And J.B. is featured all throughout this thing. I sat in Ed's car, and the wheel is so huge, Arrow. Wow. It hit the top of my thighs, as skinny as I am, and I'm sitting right up to it. And I think Tim Flock or was Gober Sosby actually kept the radio in his.
Wow.
And the Flock brothers, Tim Flock raced with Jocko Flocko, which was a monkey. Yeah. And he had a monkey, in the passenger seat with him, which he raced for several races till Jocko got loose on one race and went nuts inside. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? So these guys back then were racing on those dirt tracks, those slick dirt tracks. They were 60, 70 miles an hour. If a spindle busted, there were some terrible crashes, people thrown from their cars and run over by the racers following them because they couldn't get out of the way. Shemp Hersey burned alive, it was just terrible, some of the things.
And you have no urge of putting this into words in a book?
I can show it better with what we've done with the film. Okay. Because we're interviewing the guys and they're telling the stories. And it was really important to me to preserve that kind of Southern heritage of storytelling. And we just let the camera roll.
They still got that drawl going on and everything?
Yeah.
Oh, see, that's what makes the South, it's...
Yeah,
Southern girls with the way they talk, they really knock me out.
Those are Southern guys, man. I mean, we just set it up and we just rolled tape for hours, and then we had to figure out what to cut and what to.
How were the women when you said that they also drove and they did? Were they tough chicks? They were tough chicks.
You had Louise Smith, who's probably the best known from this area, from who raced down at Greenville Pickens Speedway, and they, when they found her, it was because they said, you got to find this Louise Smith. She drives like a bat out of hell. And she was married to a guy that owned the junkyard And she went in her first race, and no one ever told her that the checkered flag means it's done.
Yeah.
And so she finished like third, which was pretty damn impressive. You know, she was racing against the men. And they ran out there, and they couldn't stop her. And they were out on the track, and they started waving a red flag, and she finally stopped, you know. But she was an amazing character. A lot of those women, there was the Powder Puff League. There was actually a, quote, Negro racing league in the 40s that you think, really, in the South, Jim Crow South? And but there absolutely was. And the women, they raced against those guys, and some of them were damn good. I've
always said you are the Louis Grizzard of this generation.
Oh, baby, thank you.
You definitely
thank you so much.
The name of the film again?
Is Running Flat Out. It's a half hour. It's actually like 23 minutes. We're doing it like a industry standard half hour, which is what a TV half hour would be. It'll be available live to download. It's going to be cheap, $2.95 a pop.
Oh man,
$2.95 a pop. Be coming out over Thanksgiving at Amazon.com, and just go to runningflatout.com, and you can see the trailer. You can go to YouTube and look for Running Flat Out, and I think you'll really, really enjoy it. And if it goes as well as we have a feeling it's going to, it'll be followed up with a series. And we're just going to keep. There's so many people around here who had relatives that ran liquor. Mm-hmm. You know, so my grandfather ran liquor, but he was a German. He came over to this country.
Ooh, some German beer.
Yeah, he came over from Germany and came up through Mexico and ran liquor during Prohibition for Dutch Schultz in Chicago, and then took the money he made and opened up his own brewery in Germany.
You know, those Germans are pissed off at Americans now because aren't they making German beer here in America now?
Oh, sure they are.
Yeah,
but look, where's Levi's being made now in China or something? So it has a global market. But
is it a different zip when you zip up if it's in China? It
doesn't go zip anymore. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, do the letters do YKK go this way, or is it like a little box with a bird in it? I have no idea. That's a good thought, but it's good to see you, baby.
Nice seeing you too. Yeah. Should we sing Paul happy birthday?
Yeah.
All right, this is Paul's Warrior. 3, 2, 1. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Paul. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Yeah. We're going to re-Raws, man.
I love it.
We're going to re-Raws.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Appreciate it.